Hello Greebos, and welcome back to Downloadable Content. You're probably wondering, Drifter, why are you back in your void? And that is because we are going to do a follow-up episode for a video I made, I don't even remember how long ago, but we're following up on which game wins. We have 4 games to take a look at today. We have, of course, Blade and Sorcery. We're looking at Hellsplit Arena. We're looking at Tales of Glory. And last but not least, we're also looking at Swordsman VR, because all of these games have received a copious amount of updates since the last comparison video. So which one is the king this time? Last time it was Hellsplit Arena, but maybe we have an upset. Sit back, relax, and let's go over this. There are 4 categories that I'm going to be judging these games by: gameplay and physics, the overall support for their games, mods, and last but not least, well, their replay value. That's going to include things like sword handling, possibly climbing, and interacting with any physical objects that you as a player would expect to interact with in the game. So, without further ado, let's look at our first entry. The first contender on the list today is good old Blade and Sorcery. Ever since U10 came out, this game has come up leaps and bounds, and last time I did not include mods in my judgment, but I think it's time that we include mods in this judgment because, well, at this point we want to pit game up against game, and maybe some of these features will bleed into the other. Let's take a look at Blade and Sorcery. The reason why people play Blade and Sorcery is because of its sword handling and your ability to just feel like an overall badass and take down anything in your path with Blade and, of course, with Sorcery. Not only that, but the game also enables you to explore wherever and whenever you want, because you can climb on pretty much any obstacle in your path. So it's also adding an interesting parkour element that not many other VR games give you. You can also pretty much interact with any of the physical objects in game because everything pretty much has its own collision and physics points. You'd be surprised on the level of detail that you can achieve with this. The sorcery in the game also gives you telekinesis, which is an amazing power by itself, but it's also great because it gives you quality of life to be able to move things that you wouldn't be expected to move with ease. And that really helps when you're trying to be creative. And that means the fun doesn't always have to be just murdering all of your opponents. And speaking of which, that is a really huge part of the game. The way the game works, weapons don't feel floaty, they have weight to them, so being able to block, slash, parry, and riposte feels excellent. Each weapon seems to behave like its real-life counterpart, with a longsword still being heavy but able to use in one hand, while a claymore might just feel too unwieldy without 2 hands. One of the main things I love about Blade and Sorcery is that you can interact with the NPCs in almost every single way that you can think of. Pick them up by the throats, the hands, the legs, and everything. But also, they give you things like the dagger. So the dagger feels great for stabbing things, which is something that Blade and Sorcery does flawlessly. Stabbing, slashing, blunt damage all feel completely accurate. So you can do anything you really want. You can essentially just pick one of your favorite weapons and just do pretty much all the things that you imagine. And even big, blunty weapons feel excellent. And then there's the sorcery. You can cast things like fireballs and also imbue your weapons with fire to give yourself the ability to chop through simple armor or more complicated armor like chainmail. Gravity lets you push things away, as well as interact with other physical objects, including the NPCs, right out of the gate without having to worry about any mods. And then the lightning looks great, but also stuns your foes. And when you feel like you've taken enough damage, uncork a potion and you could literally drink it. Just hold it up to your lips. Or dump it all over your head as well. For the most part, things in Blade and Sorcery feel properly weighted, and you can do anything in your heart's desire. Just be creative. Of course, there's some jank things, but that's to be expected. But the game does a pretty great job with immersion. You can stab through wood, but you have a hard time stabbing through stone unless that weapon is already imbued with something like fire. Blade and Sorcery also now has a cool armor system that works for the player as well as the NPCs. So it's not just normal combat. Weapons and such can bounce off their armor and even dent it. The dents may be 2D decals, but they look pretty 3D. So that means things like blades and such can bounce off chainmail. So you want to be pretty accurate with where you stab. And then of course there are the mods. The mods really bring ultimate new life into this game. For the most part, if you think a mod exists, it probably does. And then of course there's the replay factor. Not only can you go in the sandbox or survival mode whenever you want, but U10 also brings us a full procedural dungeon mode. Let's just say I thoroughly appreciate the dungeon mode because you can do pretty much everything in it. Just pick a challenge and you can do it. And because Blade & Sorcery recently added a stealth component with its U10 update, you can do some pretty wacky things. And then finally, the support for the game is pretty impressive. Every couple of months or so, we get a new update and also the ability to try out the betas and give feedback. As well as the community devs and overall developers seem to listen to not only just player feedback, but the modders' feedback as well. Too many times has a mod actually become a main staple feature. Our second entry on today's list is the game Swordsman VR. When I first looked at this game and compared it, it didn't even have advanced weapon handling. You couldn't even do anything with the NPCs aside from, well, stab them. A lot has changed since then. They added advanced physics, you can do crazy stuff with the weapons, and you can wield them wherever you want. However, there is a major thing that unfortunately has not come to this game, and that's mod supports, which unfortunately might be the killer for this one, but let's take a look. Swordsman VR is definitely a different game, but it's very similar to Blade & Sorcery. Well, I guess minus the sorcery. It mainly focuses on the blades. Unfortunately for Swordsman VR, you can only bring 2 things into an arena and you can't store anything on your back. So if you want to use one at a time, you literally drop it on the floor. Although it does have telekinesis to make picking things up easier. But the main thing to go over is the overall physics of the weapon. You can now two-hand this weapon and half-sword things pretty much wherever and use things in ways that a weapon was never designed to be used for. And of course it paints the nice blood texture right on the weapons. And after you've played for long enough in the main story mode, you can unlock things like slow motion everywhere. It does make things a little weird, but still fun. I also love how far the axes get buried into your enemies. However, you can't jump, but you can definitely still kick. Not that that does much. You can also dismember your foes as well to embarrass them. But let's take a look at the different types of damage you can do. There's a slash damage, then there's blunt, and finally there's stabbing. Each one you feel like you can do effortlessly and you don't even have to think about it. The collision points are right on par, so you can do some pretty crazy things. However, the things in your environment you really can't interact with. I want to light the sword on fire. The game tells me I should be able to, but alas, I can't. The game is still all about the overall combat, and the enemies' animations feel interesting. Much more difficult and challenging than a game like Blade & Sorcery. It forces you to stay on your toes. And the best part is, the enemies can use two-handed weapons, unlike Blade & Sorcery. They also said that you can interact with the NPCs by grabbing them. However, it still feels pretty janky, and I don't feel like I can grab them wherever I want. However, the game does mention that you can snap necks. It feels weird. It's still a ton of fun, though, challenging yourself in the arena or in story mode. Swordsman also added a bunch of different add-on contents, or DLC if you would, to enhance your experience. So fighting things like pirates and also a kraken is pretty interesting. You can fire the cannons. Yeah! Huh! And although there's no mod support, they added different boss weapons that you can unlock. Look, I shot them. These weapons are definitely awesome, but they do get old pretty quickly. Overall, the levels are cool, the physics are cool, however, the game definitely wants more of it. Another cool thing is the game has actually added a zombie horde mode. It has one level, but it's interesting that it's there. You may only play this game mode once, especially just to unlock the secret weapon, but it's pretty interesting that there's zombies in here. It would be cool if this was a co-op PvE mode. Our third entry for today's list is, well, the game that won last time, Hellsplit Arena. The reason why it won last time is because we were comparing vanilla game to vanilla game. So mods technically didn't count, but this time, like I said, things are different. So although Hellsplit Arena features some amazing things that I ultimately appreciate in the game, it does miss out on two key factors in my opinion. And that could be replayability and longevity as well as mod support. But let's see if this game has the other legs to stand on to still keep it at its top spot. And then there's Hellsplit Arena. Hellsplit Arena feels, well, completely different than Blade and Sorcery, and still completely different than Swordsman VR. I would say the physics is a weird hybrid of the both. It definitely goes for a more arcadey feel, and weapons have to move a little bit slower. And it does have that weird sword trail that I don't seem to like, and also a weird swooshing sound. However, the game has been updated and you can pretty much use weapons however you want. This big claymore, I don't have to just hold it from here. I can hold it like this, and it feels pretty good while holding it like this also. And the weapons still feel like they have weight. And after you've played a while and unlocked some interesting weapons, well, you can go right into training mode and continue to have fun. There's a bunch of different types of NPCs, but honestly, fighting the regular light zombies just feels super fun because these ones can be easily dismembered and still keep doing what they're doing. He still wants to attack me, but chopping them up feels excellent. Unfortunately, slow motion is not a thing in this game. Although you can still do some epic things and see them, if you want to immortalize it and make it look even cooler, you better get good at video editing. One of my favorite things though about Hellsplit Arena is using the heavy weapons on these light zombies, because this has one of the best, well, gore systems I've seen in a game like this one. Chopping a light zombie in half just makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. And for the most part, you could fight how you want to fight, so you could still do some pretty epic moves. They also added a bomb, so when you throw it at an enemy, they just blow up into pieces. And one of my favorite ways to kill these zombies is actually not even with a weapon. Using your bare hands, you can do things like rip a zombie's head right off his shoulders. And when you've taken damage, you can go ahead and eat some of your favorite fruit to heal. And the funny thing is, the zombie can even slip on it also. And the fun of combat doesn't stop there. Not only can you rip off a zombie's head, well, you could do one even further and, well, take the heart right out of his body. Did you know that you can even eat this and hurt yourself? However, there is something that actually bugs me about Hellsplit, and that's the stabbing. I feel like if I want to grab someone and get up close and personal with the stab, well, it feels like it just kind of bounces right off of him. One of my favorite things about Hellsplit Arena is that the different levels have a bunch of different traps. So after you're done chopping people up and ripping their body parts in half, well, you can throw people and this Iron Maiden. Or maybe you just want them to heat up and take a nice lava bath. You can do so. It just takes a little while for it to pay off. One of my favorite things to do is bring them downstairs and introduce them to the guillotine. It can be a bit difficult to get them in there, but the payoff is amazing. And almost everything you see can be interacted with, and that is a feature in and of itself. So when you think, can I melt this zombie's head in this fire? Odds are you probably can. And their updates added things like new creatures, where you can get a horse that you can actually ride. And they also recently introduced the bow and arrow to this game, and its physics are pretty awesome. Just look at the bow bend and change in different directions when I aim this arrow. And the bright colors of this new creek level are an awesome addition. And don't forget to go fishing or hunting. And because the enemies can now have bow and arrows, don't forget to get on horseback and give it back to them. Just make sure you don't miss. Although the combat feels excellent and the gore also seems like it's pretty much Mortal Kombat, unfortunately, there's no such thing as mod support for this game. And even sadder is that the updates are few and far between, and they don't seem to add so much to the game. Although we do know that sometime soon we're getting an ultimate overhaul with Siege mode and a bunch of different additions to the game, and even a sandbox mode. So mods are technically possible, it's just weird that we haven't seen them yet. But ultimately, with the lack of support of this game, it just leaves a lot on the table, and unfortunately even more to be desired. Our final entry on today's list is the game Tales of Glory. If you haven't heard or played Tales of Glory, this game is pretty much like Mount & Blade in VR. Of course, it definitely has some inspiration from games like Blade and Sorcery, but it does its own things. The physics definitely feel a little bit different than, well, most of these other games, but you can still have your fun. There is a bunch of different modes, and if you're looking for a game that, well, has somewhat of a story, it is going to be Tales of Glory. It gives you a campaign, it gives you a survival map, it gives you training mode, and also normal battle simulators so you can just jump in whenever you want. And recently it has also gotten mod support. Thanks to someone named Little Husky out there giving the old SDK, you now can pretty much bring, well, a ton of cool things into the game. However, it's no Blade and Sorcery mod support, so don't get your hopes too high. There is also a top secret feature that is being worked on in Tales of Glory, and I don't know if I'm allowed to leak it right now. I haven't really gotten permission, but I can allude to it. Let's just say, well, maybe more than one headset can be involved, but let's keep that a secret. Tales of Glory is, well, a very special game because it adds so much that you can do. However, there's certain quality of life that you expect from the other games that doesn't quite make it into Tales of Glory. One of my favorite things is that it gives you so much to work with. There's also a dungeon mode that first came out long before Blade and Sorcery's dungeon. It's also randomly generated, so you can have a ton of fun in here as well. And the other game modes will make sure you're never bored. And this is completely outside the campaign. Also note that there is a full campaign that plays exactly like Blade and Sorcery, where you can give commands to all of your followers. One of my favorite things to do is set the bridge level to attack. What I do love is you can customize things before every single battle and ride out with your fellow soldiers. And long before anyone else had it, you can also ride on your horse to battle and slaughter some pathetic goons. It can be a little slow at riding though. But once you pick up speed, you and your men are gonna have a blast just doing a bunch of crazy stuff. And physics definitely feel a bit floaty though. However, it is meant to be a battle simulator where you're not just fighting by yourself. You're supposed to enjoy combat with your troops. I do enjoy the different cinematic modes though, and after you get certain kills, it goes into that weird slow motion. If you're looking for a game that hits you right on the battlefield, Tales of Glory is that game. However, it does lack in certain physics. But getting a crossbow and firing right your enemy's eyeball feels awesome. Sometimes reloading can be a bit of a chore. Just make sure you don't shoot any friends. And because of a mod, you can also toggle slow motion with the kick button. It does look a little weird to start. Your guy does kick, but you can turn slow motion on whenever you want. So if you're just looking to have a fun time, turn on slow motion by yourself with mods. Stabbing feels okay. It doesn't feel like Blade and Sorcery, but it's definitely there. It's not lacking like how Hellsplit Arena kind of doesn't let you stab whenever you want. Now let's take a look at some of the mods. Each level will give you one of these weird looking monoliths, and this is where you can find all the mods that you have installed yourself. So we can cycle through them. You see that there's different weapons, shields, and they're all here. And when you find the one you want, go ahead and spawn it. For the most part, there's really just weapons, with some exceptions to install, where you can fly around or even spawn crazy looking McDonald's versus Taco Bell people. But the cool thing is the arena gives you access to just spawn whomever you want and get right into combat with any of that messy story stuff to kind of get in your way. However, the downside now starts to highlight the weird physics and floating stuff about this game. Although it's still just fun to go right into the arena and give them the business.
Time for killing!
And like I said before, Swordsman VR gives you a ton of different modes. I mean, heck, this is the campaign itself right here. Looks just like Mount & Blade Overworld, and you can go into different shops just like you would in Mount & Blade. And when you're in these shops, you still get a ton of freedom. Just straight up start your own bar fights with a bunch of NPCs that may look like each other. And you can levitate a bowl. So there's still some physical interaction with the objects in your world. It's just not a one-to-one recreation. Well, Greebos, I hope I did these games justice, highlighting what they do great and hoping for what they do more of. But ultimately, we have to crown a winner today, and I like to say it was a tough choice. However, in my opinion, there is one clear frontrunner, and that is Blade and Sorcery. And yeah, you're probably thinking, oh wow, what a surprise. Drifter chose Blade and Sorcery, a game he plays every day. And yes, although I do play this game the most, The biggest reason I do is because it has all these things. The reason why it has won first place is because it has amazing mod support. It has longevity. It has great physics and weapon handling. Yes, it can do more of it. It's not a perfect 10 in the physics and weapon handling category, but the other things make it feel better. The dungeon mode in and of itself kind of takes the cake. And of course, the mod support brings this game into a total new galaxy thanks to things like the Outer Rim. But do you disagree with my dissertation? Let me know in the comments section and we can hash it out. Of course, you can always join the Discord where I am always there, lurking in the background. I also want to stop and say a very special thank you and shout out to the patrons listed here on screen. Thanks for supporting your local lunatic like me so I can continue to make weird VR content. To everyone else, thank you so much for stopping by. Hit up all the links in the description. If you want to be super awesome, the Patreon is down there as well. Keep in mind, these games are continued to be worked on and updated, so who knows? Maybe there will be a round 3. But other than that, thank you so much for stopping by. I'm Rob from Downloadable Content, and I will see you, well, in the next video.